because they went to the same.
Oh,
Can you change the, Bill, will you change the thing so we can see everybody?
No.
Yes. No, I'm not going to get into trouble. Let's change that. I'm not going to get into trouble.
What's thing?
The camera. It's right here. Can you change it,
You're
Bill?
not going to get in trouble, or you're not going to get in more trouble.
Me, I don't know.
In more trouble.
There you go.
Qualification.
Go back that way a little bit.
Get a quality.
No, a little bit, no.
Yeah,
There you go.
good.
Don't listen to Brooke.
Brooke, be quiet. Thank you.
Okay, I'm getting seasick now.
Okay, in my recording, can somebody make sure I'm recording?
Yes, it is recording.
Okay. All right, so everyone, we are recording, and how do I get back to the thing?
Hi, Ramona.
Minimize.
It's like this here, or that one's crunched.
Yeah. Does anyone know how to?
Now, if you want to sit.
Yes, Brian just hit escape. It'll at least pop it out of the screen.
I tried escaping.
I like John. I can sit closer to him
Yes.
if I need to.
Go back a ways. So many decades.
Yep.
Thank you. How'd you do it?
They have fruit over there.
There is a
View.
full screen interface.
Bill, did you copy or share the computer?
Just minimize
Okay,
it.
because I don't
You don't
have
see it.
a
Yeah, we
USB
can.
port on my computer tonight.
Okay. I'll just remind everybody, our mission for the district is that every student is maximizing student learning, and every day in all environments, our learners are growing academically, social, emotionally, and behaviorally. Here's our team members. Looks like everyone's here. Who would like to read the why today?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
By working together with authenticity and transparency as one cohesive unit, staff, students, parents, and community, we will protect our students, make a positive impact on the lives of others, ensure fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers, support students in finding their passions and talents, providing them foundational skills to be contributing members of society, supporting staff to fully connect their passions and talents, ground ourselves in what is best for students, create a win-win environment, have a united front, make decisions that are aligned with short and long-term goals, interact respectfully, be willing to address all issues.
Thank you, Jason. Ground rules. You want a popcorn? Connie, do you want to start?
Ground rules for our team norms. Basic honesty, integrity, realism, trust, accuracy, respect, and humor.
Provide open communication and an effort to work toward a common understanding.
Enter the process with a clean slate and a fresh start.
Assure commitment to the process and to the team.
Listen to one person at a time, no speaking out of turn.
Do not take things personally.
When the decision is made, support the decision, give a thumbs up, down if you want to discuss further before a final decision is made.
Begin and end the meeting on time.
Stay on topic.
Monitor your talk time so all voices are able to be heard.
Thank you. Okay. So, here's our resources if people need them. And then, discussion items. So we've got these things filled out, non-budgetary issues, and then we have budgetary issues still to do, class coverage, salary and benefits, and these are our issues completed. And then these, just so you know, is non-negotiated items that were presented by one or both of the teams, but we moved them into here that will be further discussion items, but not for negotiations, and these were other things that staff brought up. So we put them kind of into those different buckets. So, where would everyone like to start?
I thought we finished everything but the budgetary.
Yeah, we did.
Well, this one's checked off, but we didn't have.
We had a couple of jobs.
There was something else that we. Insurance, leadership dollars, extra duty pay. That was a discussion that's not that really we needed. We're supposed to have.
And I actually did work on, the working copy of,
Okay.
the negotiated
Should you want me to go into
agreement.
that?
Yep, that'd be great.
Okay, and then there was that class coverage thing that you and Jason were working on. So I'm gonna go into this, under resources in our agenda, peeps, you can go in here, and the working copy is one we're working on for this year, so we can have kind of a draft.
So everything in pink is the stuff that I worked on.
Okay,
And then when we get down in.
do you want me to go through into, like?
Sure.
Okay, so tell me just when you want me to stop. So anything in pink, you guys, if everyone could just kind of look at that.
Look updated all of our dates.
Yeah, awesome, Brooke.
Yeah, Brooke did a good job. I went in on Friday and she already had most of it already taken care of. Thank you, Brooke.
Sounds like.
This was something that I hope we can engage in a discussion on.
Okay, right now, or should we go through the whole thing first and come
Let's
back?
go through the whole thing.
Okay. This has already been approved, correct, Lisa?
Yes.
But we didn't move, if you go back to the actual agenda, I think we took out that, we just need to transfer what we
What we put in the
worked on.
agenda into here?
Yeah,
Okay.
what we ended up.
So Rebecca, would you be willing to do that? In the actual agenda, the words that everyone agreed on in this group need to override this right here.
Okay.
And that green part too.
In the group, okay. So we're just going to the pink, correct, Brooke? Stop me if I'm going too fast. These are things we talked about last time. We changed like these words, instead of being 11 or more, they put the numbers in here, these pink part. 25.
We didn't make any changes to the monetary side.
I watched most of them.
So,
Okay, good.
I just mean, in some of these, I did the shuffling based on percentages, but like the BPA, the FFA, the FCCLA, the Junior Statesman, the Tech Skills Advisor, they were in that sticky area. They didn't receive steps. So I moved these up here since those all are in competitions. That's kind of what we agreed on. And so they would also continue to get their steps for experience.
Does anybody have questions about that? We kind of talked about it at the very end. Brooke was going to do a draft. Do people have questions about that? Because I see some eyes like wanting to talk about it a little bit.
And just so you guys are aware, these people have been receiving steps since the beginning of the time. Something happened with our negotiated agreement in the past couple of years that took it out of whack. And so like Jody,
Let's not use names.
yeah, sorry.
So in a sense, yeah, those people, if we left them off this list, they would actually be getting less than the years that they've been working
Is this
Like
more-
it was
is
in
this-
half. It's
Is this
clean
more
up.
of a housekeeping?
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it's it's nothing new.
For
It's-
the practice.
Those aren't dramatic amounts of money yet, when you multiply it out, it's
Right.
not a significant.
Because we still honored it this last year.
But I just want to make sure everyone understands this, especially Trustee Jones and Trustee Grissom, if they get questions about this.
Well, we talked about FFA last year,
Mhm.
so I don't know, that was not on there. And
Yeah,
I
well,
thought that
It was
BPA
it was on there, but it was in the wrong area.
And it
Oh,
wasn't
it was
the
in the
correct
predetermined,
percentage.
yeah.
It was a lot much lower percentage too
Yeah.
after.
Okay, I was saying, 'cause I remember talking about most of these, I'm not sure about the Junior Statesman, but the BPA and the FFA
Yes.
and all, I remember.
So when we scroll down, you'll see there's a predetermined
Oops, sorry, please.
stipends, and those said there would be no steps for experience. That isn't with,
Oh, gotcha.
that hasn't been with past
Okay.
practice.
Moving it where it goes.
Yes.
Yeah, where it should have been moved last year.
Yeah.
Why are those
That's
ones
Yeah.
highlighted?
all.
Okay,
This is a
so
housekeeping.
the ones that are
Right, yeah.
highlighted are ones in the past that have received steps for experience, but after discussion last week, and to your point, that they shouldn't have been receiving steps for
Yeah, and I have
experience.
for the previous.
So I
2
didn't
years,
know if
so-
we had to, but I can tell you, our 2 honor society people that have been doing this since the beginning of time for years and years have received steps of experience. So we had some discussion that maybe those folks are still grandfathered to continue to receive their steps, but if anybody takes over, I don't know.
Would we grandfather them to stay at the step that they're at and then not continue to progress? So like if they're at step 7, they stay at step 7 and then not progress, versus if we're still accelerating them, I just see those other spots saying, okay, then those should be accelerated for that time. And that would be a discussion with them. I don't know what the right thing to do for the group is. Like I said, I was one of those people, and previously, 3 years ago, I was receiving steps since I started in GATE, and then said, oh, it was a predetermined position, and mine went back down to base. I understood it because it's within there, but I also know that I'm in a different vantage point and viewpoint looking at it, so I don't know how others would respond to it.
I think it would be a negative impact if we went backwards.
I don't want to get backwards.
So I think if we at least maintain them at the same step that they are in, that would be good.
Do we need to vote on that, or is that a housekeeping?
I would prefer it's voted on, just for the
Okay.
fact that.
So, does everyone understand what we're voting on? If you're in agreement with what Brooke said, thumbs up. If we don't understand, more discussion, or I'm against it.
You're only talking about the highlighted one?
Yeah,
So
so
it's
there's some
really
yellow
only that
highlighted,
person.
that's Honor Society and GATE.
There is no middle school GATE, so
And
that's not a person.
was there
And then
another one?
that's me, which I'm already at, that's not yet.
Just those 3.
Yeah, can we scroll back up? I was thinking there was,
It's just,
That's only 3 that are highlighted.
okay.
it's literally only those people who are
Okay.
1.5%.
Okay.
So they will be frozen at the step that they're currently
Currently,
on,
yeah.
unless a new person comes in to fill the position.
And that person will go at step 1 and it'll stay there.
So do we need something in there indicating that?
Yeah.
The MOU should say that those people are grandfathered in, is what the MOU
You
should
know,
say.
but let's suppose that one of them leaves before the beginning of the next school year and you hire somebody new. That
Then-
person's going to be on the base step, right?
Which is
It would
right
be
here.
nice if we just had
But-
something to the side, like on Honor Society, just indicating in parentheses there.
Give it an asterisk instead of put below or whatever.
Anyone coming new though, that currently, which would apply for predetermined activities, like that is there identified that they are on step 1 and it does not change.
What do you want it to
For
say?
anyone new?
Well, that current people,
If you were contracted prior to and including the 21-22 school year, you will continue in your
Yep.
current step.
yeah,
And then further than that, anyone coming in, the language applies accordingly. Is that right?
it
Okay.
just, I would just, yeah, just with those, the asterisks next to those positions, so there isn't any misunderstanding.
Yeah, just the 3 that are highlighted. correct?
Yes,
Okay, so tell me your wording, Brooke, you want it to say again?
Laura said it perfectly, very eloquently.
It's recorded.
Do you need to type?
Staff holding the position in the 2021-22 school year and prior will continue according to current staff, without option for continued increase. So they'll stay at the step that they're at, and then that's where they'll stay from here on out.
New hire.
New hire will be in according to the negotiated agreement. Can I ask on that? Does that mean we go back to my other level? No.
Okay, does that make sense?
Could we,
Okay.
there's one more gate up don't know that we should put an asterisk on gate. I'm already at step 1. It's been corrected over the last 2 years and I'm not contesting it.
Right, so that doesn't, so
It
we just.
doesn't really apply.
So you can unhighlight
Take the yellow
then?
off the gate
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, I have some shuffling I have to do on that one too. Because I was putting them in order of percentages there and they're out of whack there,
Oh.
so I need to
Yeah.
adjust that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so any questions about that?
I think that's easy.
You're gonna-
Okay, all those in agreement,
you're
thumbs
gonna
up?
put- You're gonna put an asterisk after gate?
No, she
No.
doesn't
No,
want
because
it.
She
they
said
don't, they
step
already
one.
don't.
Step 1.
She's already down at the base.
They corrected mine, and I understand and don't contest that.
All those in favor, thumbs up. Okay, that's unanimous, Rebecca. Okay, Brooke, let's keep going.
Oh yeah, that one was, we voted on that for March 15. That was new that we put in and voted on.
So should we be changing the highlighted color to the
You can
teal
change-
blue is what we were using for all the new language?
I'll let her do that later instead of taking everyone's time right now, so we can come back to that.
Just so that there's some consistency.
I don't know what that was. I came about it. Maybe there was a line that somebody.
I don't know about class coverage.
And we're gonna change the.
And I put it in the. I put it in the prep area.
Good job, they moved it.
Fine.
Okay, everyone okay with this? Did we already vote on
Yeah,
this?
we voted.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's it.
Or that's what I have so far.
Sign off.
I had something that I tried to bring up last time, and we were gonna discuss it, and it never came about, and that's okay, but if we could do it now, that, I think it fits.
Okay.
And that is that there was a request made to me in negotiations that, like over at Lakeland High School, leadership class has gone from a half year to a full year, and the leadership teacher has also taken on a series of extra duties and made it make sense that now that it's a full year class, they're doing lots of additional things after school, taking kids to conference, the state conference out in Boise, doing a variety of different things, tailgates for building community over it, so tailgates for every sport, like a fun tailgate event after one baseball game during the year, after a tennis match, all of these sorts of things, and ASB is leading all of this and doing lots more. And so, as I understand it, I'm pretty sure it's accurate, that they have they're on there at 6.2, but it was always based on a half year.
Where is it?
They're on the steps one.
Yeah, and right, and there they are. And, and that was always based on a half-year thing. And at least at Lakeland High School, their obligations, other than creating the ASB elections in the late spring to repopulate that class, they had no other obligations, and really not a lot of outside activities happened with ASB after the first semester was over. That's no longer true. And that person asked, would it be possible to review the size of that, the percentage of that stipend? And I said, that sounded like a fair request, let me bring that up. And so here we are.
6.3.
So
It's currently 6.2, and it was based.
Bob wants to offer to
Oh, 6.3.
All the way to the bank.
How many people agree?
Nice.
I have a question, So is that 6.2 of the base?
Yeah, done the same way as all those others, correct.
And then they get the
Right,
steps.
So what you're saying was prior, they only had like a half a year's worth of work, and now they
Right,
have a full
and,
year's worth
right,
of work.
and they teach a class, and they get paid for that, that's part of their contracted time, but like some other things that are in there, they do a significant number of things after hours, weekends and nights and things, and hence the existence of the stipend to begin with. But that was based on a half year's worth of those sorts of things. The course itself lasted a half a year. It's now a full year. I believe it's been a full year even more recently than for us, than Timberlake has gone up to a full year a while back. But the stipend never moved, and both advisors are doing significant numbers of things on into the spring on their own time, weekends, nights, and there was a request to review if maybe that couldn't go up. They didn't give me a number. Pretty sure Mr. Jones's point one was not what they had in mind, but that could be discussed.
Is it comparable to the drama and how much work goes into the drama
I would imagine that
in the yearbook?
that's probably a yes. I don't want to prove on it, but yeah, that kind of a thing I would assume. Example and a give back. I believe Mr. Ryder told me that it's true up at Timberlake. They'd like to consult my person, leaving names out, in my building. What I mean would love to consolidate, and they would happily give if we could get some sort of reasonable increase, maybe like 10% as a number. Could they would give back and it's not real big, but they would give back the prom stipend because both of these people have now had ASB take over prom, and it's its own stipend further down. And I think it's a fixed one. It's one of the ones that doesn't move. So it's about $450, I think. And they said, well, if you could get us some sort of reasonable, we're already doing that, and we get that little stipend. Just take that back and help to fund that thing. But maybe you could get us up a little bit more reasonable for what we're doing. Like again, I'm making up 10 as an example, but something. It would not necessarily doubling the 6.2, but they're doing significant more stuff besides even in the prom. But this person said they'd give back the prom if you could get us to some reasonable thing.
So they're currently getting 7.7.
Yeah, prom was 1.5. Is that
Yeah.
is that right? I didn't notice the percentage on mine. So yes, that would be true. But simply because they took that on, it's not a fixed ASB. They just did it.
And they have a class that they teach as a part of whatever regular
Schedule. That is correct.
And is that true also for drama?
That is also true for drama. That is correct.
And I've seen it more as a band director
Yeah,
level,
that's what I was
because
gonna ask.
band is also year-long competitions or year-long.
Right.
Drama there's singular like seasons for shows, and so that's not, there are off, but not that there's off time that drama is ever not working, because I hope
But they become significantly busier in the spring. Drama does.
Yes,
But
like there's
as they get deeper into the kids' skill sets and all that, the big productions
Yeah,
come.
there's
They tend to come
swings.
winter and spring.
The time commitment, I think, is greater during that period when they're actually doing.
Correct,
Yes.
but it might be a little thinner in the after-school hours in, say, September and October. The kids don't have skill sets. You have to build those big productions that take all that rehearsal time and then actual shows. But anyways,
I would love to see it up with a band director.
Can I ask you, because you have a really good memory, when we did the band director previously, didn't we talk about how many after-school events that they could expect
Yes.
from them to get that 10.5%?
We didn't ever actually put anything in
We
writing.
did it for elementary, but not for
Yeah, but we didn't do it at the high school level.
Okay.
Because it was also dependent on success that year, different levels that year, different things. I think we've always come back to, in all of these discussions, that question of how much is each thing.
Right.
And that's a beast of a question, because it can be student dependent, it can be teacher dependent,
it can be year
it can be
dependent. There
year
are different years
dependent.
where things get big or little.
But I think if I was, this falls under your athletics and activities director as well for afterwards and stuff. If that was that person, I would be expecting the same level of commitment from this director and having that. Our band participates in sport events. They're doing different things. They also go to competition, as I would be seeing with an advisory for leadership. And I look at what our schools have done. You can use this year alone at Christmas time with our Hawk Challenge. Like, I would pay gold for the community building that those programs bring.
That was another thing I was supposed to put, was
Gold.
the Hawk TV and the Hawk TV and the Tiger TV.
Tiger TV. If that goes in with a newspaper.
Yep.
/ visual media.
Even if you just think about the battle for the buck, and the battle for the cattle, and all of the time, and then you have prom, and then you have homecoming, like leadership, and that's, so those are 3 huge events that they take on. And then they also have all of the, like the tailgating and the just the supporting of the different.
It's super, for the person who is the right person. I can't speak to Tim because I just don't know the person, but our person is over the top with the amount that they take on and that they do with the kids to make things happen and to build community and all of those sorts of things. And it is a significant amount of personal time. But again, you can have somebody that overcommits to that too. The district doesn't have to endlessly pay no matter what they do, but to be in line with what they're really doing and the difference that they're making, it seems like a number. But
I would just put media, digital media, like because if you put Hawk TV, you put Tiger TV, and those could change in the future. Then you're having to digital media, or what would we call that? Visual.
So
Broadcasting.
Broadcasting. There you go.
Again, we have a lot to do tonight.
Yep, so we need
Brian
a
has some information. So how do you want to proceed? Do we need to do something? Do you want to think about it? Do you want to make a decision now? Do people have enough information to make, a decision? Do you want more information before we talk about it? How many hours that they work.
I think we can put it out there and see if where everybody's at on the same page.
Okay.
Do we want to toss out the 10.5, or and somebody else wanted to say the double it at 12.4?
I personally have been on both sides of like drama and leadership, and I just am the band director. I would have a hard time going to 10.5. I mean, I would say being comparable to the drama would be probably is what I'm looking at.
I would agree with that.
So can you meet us in the middle with a piece? If they're already at 7.5 because they took on prom, if they give you back that, can you get them to 10?
We do ASB and
Because that would be actually only an additional 2.5 beyond what's being currently paid. Right?
Which is more than what they currently get.
My concern is
Which is more than what they
longevity of this. I think there needs to be a rubric. Like we had talked about this for several years. Like from this many hours outside of contract to this many is this percent. When individual people on the team are bringing individual cases, it could. I think it needs to have some like rationale, and we need to move forward. We had talked several years ago. We had a rubric from a different district that we looked at. And whether it's a work committee that works through next year, we make a decision on this for this one, I would just suggest for the future, I don't think it's healthy for us to have individual discussions like this.
Gotcha.
I agree.
Yeah. I'm new to this, so I'm learning as we go.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say you did anything wrong.
This is an ongoing issue, is what you're actually saying.
Yes.
Okay, so
And
gotcha.
how do we quantify
Yes.
the
Yeah.
time commitment?
Because we need to.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that it's fair. So it's
Yeah.
equitable.
And I don't think we're going to solve that overnight. I think this is a work group similar to how Jason did the extracurricular that maybe you even chair, John, where you can get information from different people. I think that would be...
Speak up, get a job.
Well, here, you've got a lot of experience. I think you could do
Well,
great.
and you could
No
just,
good deed
you
goes
could,
unpunished.
you could pull somebody from each of those
Yeah.
departments and then just show the percentages and then talk about what they do extra
Right.
and they would probably have some good insight too.
So I'll make a proposal then and throw the numbers out there. And now it's a regular thing now in both buildings, both high schools, that the ASB people are actually doing the prom. That's a 1.5 stipend, 1.5%. If you add it to 6.2, you get to 7.7. How am I doing on my math, Bob?
You're doing real good.
So if you could give them another 2.3 and make it 10 and collapse the prom and make it permanently part of ASB. It becomes an obligation of ASB at both high schools. It currently is. It's no impact to the people there, and in the future, it gets sold as the ASB leader. Here's one of your things, battle for the paddle, battle for the buck. Prom is also yours. And then, so the difference, the budgetary impact is 2.3% for a second semester of all these activities. Seems reasonable, of the base. So, would seem like not an unequitable thing for the number of significant additions that they've added on going to a full year.
Well, I just have to say, what strikes me as interesting is hearing you say that that was only considered a half a year role before, but it was stipend at 6.2%. Whereas we know, like, the choir director, when they do things, or drama, and they're doing things, that was already a full year.
Right.
So I'm surprised that that was only a half a year role and had a stipend that was
Not reflected.
that large, I guess. I mean, that surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, and first semester is with leadership because they were stuffing all that stuff because it was only a half year course, so it was getting stuffed in there. I was not there when the 6.2 was put forward, so I can't. That's only a guess on my part as to why it would be again. Because if you double it, right, you can see it rockets over everything in that
Sure,
list.
over everything on the
Right, with the
list.
exception of FFA. So yeah, I don't have an explanation. I just have a guess, like you. I only have a guess for why that would be.
So do you want to make a proposal and have people vote?
So my proposal is to collapse the prom.
So remove the prom?
remove prom and dump that activity into ASB as a regularly expected thing, but take that stipend with it, put it in there, and along with some additional, because there's lots of extra things now being done second semester as it's a full year course, that the advisors are doing on their time, weekends and nights, that they weren't before. So it seems like 10 would be a reasonable number. That's my proposal.
Okay, any more discussion?
Do you think, and I don't know, do you think yearbook and drama would agree that it would be more than their stipend? So that's like, cause like right now I'd be a sideways, I'm okay with what the group does, but at the same time, I don't wanna put them over drama and yearbook if they're doing the same amount, because drama and yearbook, they're also doing stuff year round, right? But I don't know, John, you're on the side.
Right, and of course, as a non-supervisor in the building, I have some sense of it because I work with these people in the building, but I don't actually sit in their pocket either and watch those hours, so I don't know. So, fair question, I don't have a great answer to that.
So I think my counter proposal on that would be put them at 9.2 and then get the community together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is that with bringing the prom into it? I'm like, with that, I would leave the prom on the side. I feel like it's happenstance that they're covering prom right now. That doesn't seem like it's a have to be, or is that way collapsing it? So I would say 9.2 and leave.
You could do it that way, but that just costs even more than my recommendation right there. If you do that, the budgetary impact on that is almost 11. No, I get what you're doing. But we want to be above board with the numbers though, right?
Yeah.
The bigger question with that becomes, is that now the norm, that this position has prom as part of their duties and responsibilities? So prom is no longer a separately stipend.
Which is my point.
Yeah.
Forever.
Right.
Which
Prom
is true. It usually, I mean, I've never been in a high school that it isn't with the
Right.
Exactly.
It's a fairly common thing. It's not always been true at Lakeland High School, even a few years ago, but our new person who's doing it has just taken it and of course gets that small stipend that comes with it, but is glad to just subsume it. And I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation in 2 years or 5 years when whoever our chief administrator is rehiring that position because someone's moved on, that they understand it's a full year course, this is the stipend, here are the benchmark things that absolutely go with it, and there's a stipend that helps with that, and it's just a done deal.
And
So
the same is true of Timberlake.
correct. They are already doing the prom up there. The ASB person is already doing the prom. Getting that small stipend, but again, roll it together, it might actually, it's a little less paperwork all the way around. So 9.2, I can absolutely live with that as well. And then future committee, and let's see what we can do to work out, and maybe something scoots it up or leaves it there based on a rubric.
So just clarification, 9.2%, and we're gonna put /prom with that 9.2% and take out the prom advice.
Sure, right, and right. You probably need it there for a year or two just to remind everybody after a while, just like all the other things. I don't think you really need to. But in that year or two, when we're doing the transition, to remind people if they're looking what happened, maybe that is a good idea to show that
Expectation.
that expectation got voted. But I'm good with that.
Any more discussion? And then the sub part of the notes, Rebecca, would be that a subcommittee would start to work on and
A rubric.
John would take
to bring for next year.
would take the lead on that. Okay, all those in favor, thumbs up. Okay, that's unanimous. Rebecca, everyone's thumbs up.
So I'm gonna change this.
$720.
7.
Total between the two.
Take it as a baseball program.
Yeah.
That cuts your budget in half, doesn't it, Jason?
So everyone's okay. I'm going to take this off with extra duty pay. We just solved that so that we are looked at that. Okay.
Rebecca, did you hear that dollar amount for the budget?
I did not.
$720.
Okay. Then I'm going to have Brian take over now because he has some information about.
Can you make that a little larger?
He will. He just was. I was letting him
I didn't
decide.
go for a lot larger since we're asking it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is information that it's the format I've used in previous years. It's a little different this year than previous years in how I did it because we've had, often I compare revenues to budget and then projected revenues to actuals and things like that, but with budget being based on ADA and actuals being based on enrollment, we're sort of comparing apples and oranges in some of this. And with the unknown that we have enrollment for next year, but we don't know the year after.
Enrollment funding, he's talking about that just passed for a 1-year temporary rule.
So,
for the budget. For the
regardless, I'm gonna have, this is, oh, I should have, that's right, the numbers are right. Just don't, I didn't update my spreadsheet there.
So the year, that's for next
Don't worry
year.
about 2022.
Okay, gotcha.
So, is 21-22. So, effectively, it's this school year, and this is the actual revenues that from our February report. So this isn't a final, but it's not going to adjust that much more. So we earned 238.74 units, which is the highest ever in the district by far, because of enrollment and not attendance. If it would have been attendance, just so you know, there are some tools out there that we can run. We would have earned about 215 units, which is about what I budgeted, but we would have been, since the whole state would have been in protection, we would have been at 209, what we would have been paid after the minus from protection. It would have been 6 units.
Not much difference between ADA and
Right, on enrollment, right. So really, if you took that protection lot out of the equation, it was, 215 to 238, 7. So, for discretionary, of course, we don't have that number yet. It's based on a different calculation than the first reporting period. It's based on your best 28 weeks. So I'm saying 236. It's usually down just a little bit from your enrollment. So, but this 29,542. That is our per unit funding this year. That actually is going to be adjusted too. Because of the way this crazy year, where you can't go to PSIF to fill that in, but they did a supplementary appropriation to sort of cover that gap, so it's going to be real close to that number. So it's still, the way we do budgeting, we don't really know what we get till the end of the fiscal year. So anyway, that is showing where we were this year. So, I'm running enrollment revenue projections, and since we are on enrollment, I am going to build budget on 239 units. This was 238, so it's relative flat. I just rounded. We could, if we have our anticipated some enrollment growth, we could have more, but I guess you just never know. So I thought that was reasonable. These are, when I plug in everybody for, when you get your weighted average, it's based on, how they're paying that year. So here's the weighted averages this year. You can see like the administrator's weighted average is quite a bit higher, but they got that 7% on the funding formula, and that's profit. And it's also where our administrators land on the state salary schedule. Classified, same thing. It was 23,216. This was the 7% increase. Instructional service, these is really higher than what we actually did. And part of that is really, as you'll see, most of it is the AP money that's coming through. And so that is driving more revenues. But these are when I did the revenue projections. So you get your total salaries, you get the mandatory benefits they add, and so if you look, though, on overall just salary-based apportionment revenues, I'm projecting $800,000 more. So than what we got this year. So one reason why it really isn't that much is that, just so you know, that the career ladder, as far as just like if you're a P5 or a P4 on that funding, it only went up 1%. Not 10% raise, it went 1%. Most of the, when the governor was talking 10%, I don't know how they got there. They were first talking the bonuses that we're paying this year and next year, plus probably the AP money. Anyway, that's the formula.
So Brian, of that $795,000 increase in SBA, is the majority of that coming from this second year of funding for APE, and that's already flow-through money, so that's not
Yeah, I'm gonna-
money that we can.
I'm going to show that in a sec.
Okay.
The other part, of course, is the discretionary funding, what they did this year. So the discretionary funding, if you look at here, this 29,542, the way the legislation reads is that you're to spend 16,226 is for discretionary, 13,316 per unit is for medical expenses, and then the law says, but if you don't spend on medical, you can be discretionary. But that's the breakdown of our discretionary money. This year, they gave us the same 29,542, and the increase in discretionary was 6,382, which is a big bump. But it was all for medical, is how they stated it because that was part of that trying to go to the state plan or having that.
And he has the numbers over there on the left.
So our discretionary is going to increase. I'm sort of budgeting the same that we will earn 1.5, but it's all for medical. Effectively, if we want to honor the intent of that legislation, that they increased our discretionary to enhance medical benefits for employees. So that's 1.5 million. We have discretion where the law says if you don't spend in medical, you spend in something else. We don't have to do that.
But I will caution you, I really want people to hear this. We met with the governor, I'm the Region 1 SUP president. We met with the governor's team, and they are going to you have to do a report back, and the legislature is really going to be looking at, the intent was it to go to insurance. I just want to caution people that was the legislative intent, and we do need to do a report back on where our district spends the money. So even though it isn't legislatively controlled, they are going to be looking at that.
We will be reporting.
Yeah.
So any questions on that? There's more stuff as we go through, but I know it's a lot of information that's sort of dry. So, I'm hitting my computer. So here, this is just this, okay? So I'm going to another screen so you can see the state revenue. So here is if I did our revenue projection with no AP.
When she says AP, it's advanced professional. We say APE out loud in advanced professional endorsement. So just for people that are watching this, that's what he's talking about, not advanced placement classes in high school, but advanced professional.
So when I did the the worksheet that the State Department sends us, calculates our base proportionate, I have one where I put we have like 96 people on the advanced placement rung, so I put them whether they are currently, if they're a current AP2, I did put them down to AP3. If they're current AP1, I put them AP2. I put nobody on AP1. I'm assuming 0, so less than. So, but that was everybody who was an AP, I just put on a P5. And then you see the difference in revenues. So there's $500,000 of our additional revenue that's generated by AP, by the advanced placement rung, having those higher numbers with those 96. And so effectively that's a pass-through. Does that make sense?
500 of the 795, or after AP is taken out, we would have 500 left. So 292 is what is AP.
No, the AP is 500,000.
The AP, simply the AP is 500,000.
Right. So you have 2230, 1970. So the difference between this is with AP.
Okay, thank you.
And so that's the variance. Now, and then that was just the same. Okay, so the next one gets pretty busy, and I'm just going to focus on the left. So I added some of these things that we've talked about, okay, and things that we've done in the past. So here's the estimated cost, and I times it by our 20% mandatory benefits, and then I get the total cost. So there are, we signed off on additional coaches, so that was at 34,188 we talked about. hard to fill positions, there's 27 of 2,500, is that correct?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And then, so it's $81,000 what that cost is. So this is pretty similar, you know, to CERT going across, because, you know, the career ladder doesn't reflect that. It just, the revenues are reflected in where we land people on the career ladder. And that 30, that's sort of our historical average of people moving across. And about 65% of staffs move down. We have, you know, some people on their, where they are, they're at the bottom, so they don't get a move. Is sort of the cost. It's about $1,400, or yeah, $1,453 if they move down. Here's the AP run pass. So I actually took everybody those 96 people and just gave them what the AP stipend is based on the variance between the P5 and the career ladder, those dollar amounts. It actually costs us more than the $504,000. It's actually cost us $526. It's not a dead pass-through, and that's because it's a weighted average. So that does concern me long term. As more people have an 8, that
doesn't it say in the NA that it has to be no cost to the district in our NA?
Yeah, I don't know.
It does.
I just calculated it out, and of
Something
course
like
this is budget projection. You'd have to look at actuals, and you look at actuals. Then I did admin steps, classified salary steps, extracurricular steps. Our medical increase, we have not got, I know it's 9.8%. I do not have what the impact of the plan is, but if I take what we're currently spending on medical and increase it by 9.8%, assuming staffing's relatively the same FTE, it's $322,000. Then, so if we took this 1.506 and I used that to do part of the coverage, right? The 322.
Yeah.
That would leave me 1.18 left over for more medical. That makes sense? We don't have to do that, you know, that could be partial cover dependence. We enhance our medical by different ways. So I just threw the dollar in there to zero it out, but I didn't make any recommendation on what that would look like. We need more information from the benefit council and our broker on, you know, if you gave another $200 per benefited staff member, roughly, that would be honestly a month. What could that get you? So, all that equals, if we did all that, it's $2.8 million. And we only have $2.3 million of revenue increase based on enrollment to enrollment. So we go, how are we going to afford all this stuff? Here's where it gets different. Because our enrollment went up this year from 215 units to 238 units, and I'm going to base it on sort of 21 right now. Or that actually should be 23, sorry. Or I don't know. I'm sorry guys, I'm looking at too much numbers lately. Anyway, this year our revenues are way above budget of over $2 million because of that enrollment rule. Because we budgeted on attendance, but we earned enrollment. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So next year, so effectively we have a $2 million that is increased state revenues. So you could say for next year, I don't know what the enrollment ADA, what's going to happen past next year, whether it continues or not. I have some feeling that they couldn't, I don't think they'd take us just back down to ADA and have every district in the state in protection and being dropped huge dollars. I don't know. Maybe
I think it's a very strong possibility.
Okay, well, I don't know. Well, then we have to look at, so what I was saying is that we could do these things, we can change these things. I'm not, you know, we can. And adds, if we want to do an overall increase on the base, here's sort of what it costs for all groups. It's about 208. So think of that. If we gave a 2% raise across the base, it's going to be, you know, 575. So these are just scenarios I ran just so people could look at. And we can have the conversation on how you might use that enrollment dollars or not, or anyway. So here's a scenario. Let's say we did the steps and lanes. We did the medical increase. And we did our, that's what we already agreed to, right? We did the AP pass-through. We enhanced the medical benefits for the variance after we did the increase. You know, that, of course, that could be a conversation. We gave the 2%. We have 3.4 million. State revenue increase with a 2.3, so I'm 1.1 in the red. So I take half of my enrollment revenues, 2310, about 50 to cover the red. Then I have enrollment revenues for the unknown and other needs. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Or am I?
Makes sense.
Okay, so scenario 2 is sort of the same stuff. You do 2.5% increase, and of course, the gap is bigger, so you're taking more. It's not quite a 50-50 split. And I'll go through since this is a lot of information. So then you go again, you can run numbers. This is all projections, of course. 3% increase all groups. You still have everything there. Now you're taking 60, you know, now you're getting over. You're putting more of that revenue gap towards to cover this variance. But you're still, you know, there. But at that point I'm saying, I don't know if I want to use, this is just Brian talking, not, you know, we can have the conversation. You know, I would be uncomfortable in my position to say, let's take the whole enrollment and with the unknown out there, I don't know.
How likely do you think it is that you will be funded, even if they took away enrollment, less than the 235, 238?
Well, we got enrollment next year. If we take if they went back to ADA after next year,
2024.
2024, we'll be at 200. We'll earn 220 instead of 238.
And I just want to clarify for the record, it's only till signing dying, till the last day. They have to do a temporary rule even from signing dying to the end of the year, which they had to do this year. So if they stick their feet in, put their heels down, which there were several people that tried, which is why the governor vetoed, we could have had this into law, and the governor vetoed it because of some politics behind the scenes. So I just want to be very clear. My information of being very close to the working group that's working on this is that it is not a done deal. The state board would love for it to be a done deal, but I'm telling you right now, it is not a done deal. And this temporary rule only goes for enrollment till signing dying, which means if they go out in April, you could literally be on enrollment, which I know wouldn't be a huge cost to the district, but it could be the rest of April, May, June, July, until we're done with our funding, could be back to ADA. And there are people that think that that may happen unless some people politically get to be part of this funding work group that's going to go on.
So I guess I would say that I'd like, because I know that's one angle coming, but also like from our end, what's being shared is that there's full support in the enrollment-based funding, is that there was some concerns within the bill that didn't have to do with the actual enrollment pieces, which was part of the veto, and that Governor Little shared with the association at the state level that he was in conjunction saying, I support this, we are redoing so that it can be a solid thing to continue in the future. So that's just the two angles of what people are getting.
Yeah, except for, I do want to caution people, for us to make long-term sustained costs that are going to be sustained for the district forever, permanent for salary schedule when we don't have permanent funding based on enrollment, it's just a cautionary thing I want to make sure people are aware of. I'm not comfortable with that piece. But anyway, just continue. I just want to make sure that I voice my thoughts.
So I just sort of kept going through saying, once we started hitting 60% of that enrollment benefit, however we want to say it, that's sort of saying, I don't know if I want to go up to 85% or 70%. So But I did go here saying, okay, we do the same thing, and I increased the 3 for, bigger increase to all groups. But to keep it sort of where that 62, that's just sort of where I did. We sort of have to maybe use some of those revenues for AP to help pay for the raise for all the groups. If we went up to 4%, again, to stay around that 61, 62, AP has to be knocked down, I think, to 50%. And then really our medical benefits, we're probably not going to do that whole pass-through. The 1.5 will be significant.
Can I ask, the enrollment revenues, those are in addition to our current reserve funds? Like considered part of that continuing reserve fund?
No, the enrollment revenues are...
In addition to. They were because of enrollment just this year. They're not considered in that.
Right, because if I had to go budget ADA, we'd be $2 million less money.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. Does that make sense? So effectively, this is the first year, probably ever, well, I don't know, ever, that, a budget was built and suddenly you were up
excessively.
25 units, right? That is pretty rare.
And temporarily up.
Right.
That's what I was just gonna ask. So potentially, Brian, by doing this, we could be potentially using one-time monies to enhance the salary schedule.
Well,
And that's the point right there.
possibly. And then let me get through this, and then we can start having the conversation, or how you guys want to proceed. Then again, I said, okay, let's say we did a 5% increase for all groups. Then really, I think now we're getting to the point where we almost have to, we'd have to either adjust these medical, or the AP is now we really can't do pass-through, because most of salary-based apportionment's increase is AP. So eventually, if you're going to keep increasing salaries, if you're going to pass it through, there's only so much of an overall raise you can get, because you're passing through the majority of your increased revenues on salary-based apportionment to the AP, which is okay if that's what we would choose to do. But we can't do both. And that's sort of where I stopped. And again, that was there. And there could be more scenarios.
So just so people are on the same page, Brian, the enrollment revenues for the unknown and or other needs that you've kept about, that you feel comfortable keeping about 35 or 37, 38%, just explain what you think that those pieces may be, why you need to keep that amount out. Back to your scenario one.
I was
this last line.
Like right there?
Yes.
And the one you felt most comfortable, it was like going up to around 60 something and 30 something.
Well, I didn't want to go any higher, that was just
60.
me. But I guess when I was saying this, that given that the state has given the enrollment, I guess my thinking is at some point, it is part of our revenues, and should some of those go to address our biggest costs, our staffing needs, and try to do those things for retention and recruiting as we compete with Washington and compete with our neighboring districts and things like that, that to just say we're going to, and that, I'll take the, direction from my superintendent and the board and where they land. If they want to say you have $2 million more of revenue, those they're going to put to one-time costs, and that's how they want me to budget, then I could certainly do that. But
what would you use that 1.1 million for? Like, what additional costs could come up? Because we funded all the teachers at enrollment. I mean, we funded above what we actually budgeted for. Like, we funded all of those. So, what other additional costs would come along that we would use that $800,000 for?
Facilities costs. We don't have a planned facility levy anymore. So, if we have building needs, like we have to be able. We've got a budget for that. We have a curriculum adoption.
Can I get a clarification? All of the work that you've done here is based on this year's staffing levels?
Correct.
So there's nothing projected for any increased need in staff?
That's what I thought he was talking about.
Yeah, and that could be for some of those things. I haven't, right now with our staffing, I mean, not projecting a huge FTE increase at this point. We added a lot of FTE this year to sort of made up for our
What we cut for COVID.
sort of what we cut during COVID and stuff like that. We're what, about 280 teachers in the general fund, and just a year ago we were 260. So we sort of made up. I think that what's going to happen with staffing is that we may have to address some bubbles as they come up, but I would think that our staffing at the secondary level and things like that is probably fairly solid. Yeah, I could see us doing that, but given maybe these revenues or fund, you know, we definitely have with fund balance and with, you know, these increased revenues to deal with the onesie twosies.
Do we currently have any unfilled positions?
Yeah,
Yep.
there was a couple of positions we couldn't this year, and right now
SWD for sure.
Right now we do have a huge need for SWD. I had overall, you know, across the board 56 positions open right now. Can I get clarification? So on your $1.1 million that you're kind of holding back a little bit, is that also because of the unknown of whether or not, to Becky's point, that they might switch back to ADA, you know, mid-year?
Yeah,
Has to be.
It's not mid-year, it's just at the last day of the legislative
That's
session.
what
They would decide.
They've already
for
made
the
it.
following year.
yeah, I mean,
But it's
some of
for the rest of that
it,
year.
some of, I guess, the gray, the holdback, as we go through all the scenarios or changes as you go through. Yeah, is saying that there's unknown, and so it's just sort of.
And we know it
Well,
happens
continue
because
on.
they've since COVID, they've thrown a wrench at us every year.
Well, it's a,
you know,
it's a very
whatever.
difficult environment to do a school budget right now, but it is what it is.
That's why you have to be very cautious.
Now, with the insurance at 9.8, so we had talked before that with the allowance, are you just saying that the 9.8, it would be covered? We talked about adding additional funds to the, you know, the buyout plan right now would be the driver plan, those sort of vouchers.
That we have to see what this other 1.18 could get us.
Right.
This is keeping status quo. So if we just keep our same plan with a 9.8% increase, that's going to cost us $320. Then, because they did,
Just 60 and 60.
yeah, wherever I had that,
It's back a few. Right there, 16,
Yeah.
13.
they give us on top the 35. That literally, that's 6,382 times the 236. That's $1.5 more million. But that was literally, you know, and this, if you look at the actual legislation, they have this number and this number last year. This year they have this number, the 16,226, and then they have this 13 plus the 6,382. It's like 19,000 something. So that's what that's reflecting. Does that make sense? Now, we have the discretion, because it says you can spend it for enhanced benefits, or if you don't, discretion. But we will be reporting on what did we do with our medical benefits this year. There's going to be a report that when we're at the legislative roadshow, there'll be some reporting that we send down based on what we're doing in October.
What is the current cost to the district for medical?
It's about, you know, won't be 90% of 322,000, and it's like that's $6 million or so. 6.9.
So, in essence, that whole 1.5 could go to medical. That whole 1.5.
Which would close the gap for what the district is over. Because my understanding is the state says, here's what we expect you to be
No,
covering, but
the state,
we're fulfilling more than that already.
no.
Kind of like the salary schedule, or they're not.
I haven't looked at that, no. So right now, the state, if you're in this is what they're trying to do. If you're in the state plan, that's about $13,000 for an employee, for an FTE. We're not paying $13,000 an FTE. We're closer to $7,000. So the $6,000 was to get us up closer to what the state to get to for the state plan. The problem is they didn't base this on they based this on FTE. But classified staff are not full FTE. So if you're an admin assistant and you work 200 days a year at 8 hours, that is, so 200 times 8, that's how many hours you have in a year. But a full-time employee is 260 days times 8. So they're like a 0.8. And if I have somebody who's we're giving benefits to at 6 hours, so we're benefiting them at 6 hours. So there's 6 hours for let's say they just work a school year, a bus driver. 6 hours times 171 days. They're like a 0.57, but I still have to pay for the full 1.0 FTE. So the whole way they did the medical is goofy because they're putting it in discretionary, which isn't even associated with FTE. Right? I'm just telling you, it's very, it's a fun, you just have to look at it as a formula and try not to say it's a quid pro quo because it's not. Because schools, FTEs are not like regular FTEs in the world where everybody works 260 days, 8 days a year. Our maintenance staff, they're a full FTE, that's what they do. Or a full-time custodian or myself and things like that. But even they are funding teachers. They're considered a teacher if you're a 1.0 FTE teacher, even though you don't have 260-day contracts. They are considered 1.0. Anyway, that's where they're trying to get that extra dollars, that $6,000, try to get that most districts pay what we are, right around that 7,000, maybe 8,000 per FTE. They're trying to get up to the state average, backing into it with using discretionary. So right now, the intent is that, okay, we're spending, what we were at, that we would take this extra 6,000 of Howard, and that would sort of go towards medical benefits for all groups. We have the discretion as a district. We can say we're happy with that, and we're going to take the 1.5 and use another one, or not use it. But there is reporting associated, like Dr. Meyer said, that there'll be a new report. I don't know what it looks like because I'm sure they'll get their report. How much money we received and
the message is, if you screw around with it very much, then they'll do something different the next time around.
Probably.
So if you don't follow their intent, you're going to be at risk for the future.
Yeah, they were pretty stern about that at the roadshow.
So the 9.8, which would regularly be absorbed by the district, or has been in the past, not a 9.8 all the time, but that increase, that we can use the insurance money for that to cover that this time, right? That's full legislative intent to do that. Right? That's not a problem. So that gets taken care of with that money. So then, Brian, I'm still trying to break it down to a person, even though it's not a fair exchange and it's discretionary. But you said something about $200 a month, roughly, for all our FTEs, for all of our employees that receive benefits. There's an additional $200 in that from that particular pie to spend, and we'll have to wait and see what the groups tell us. Our benefits company, what do you call them there? What is their name? I was going to still call them Hellbling, but they can give us some feedback on what we could not purchase. Same with Blue Cross, right? About what we could do with that money, what it could buy us.
Yeah, you either change the plan or you you up the allocation, and then if you allow it to cover dependents to
Right.
let you have.
Again, the new driver plan becomes the upper one, or vision, or allocation for dependents. Any of those things would be possible. Correct.
Correct.
We need a breakdown on those.
Right. Okay. So that's not. If our intent would be to spend it all as the state and the legislative intent of the bill is, then that we'd have to have that conversation later, right?
Yeah, it's about 1.5. Of our 2.3 estimated increased revenue, the 1.5 they want going towards medical. So 322 is part of that. And then this one.
And the
is
322 is the 9.8%.
Correct.
Based on this year's numbers, right?
Yeah, but that's
Which is the lower plan.
both plans. Well, yeah. I mean,
It's just the
it's the overall that
Okay, got it.
if you were paying $575 a month, now you're paying $575 times 9.8%. Keeping the same plan. So that's whatever we do, that's going to be a hit. We can't unless you reduce your benefit.
Change the package, right?
Yeah, unless you change the package to do it right.
Okay.
So
If we're gonna change the package, I don't know if going backwards is gonna help us with.
no, I'm not recommending that with more money going towards medical.
So typically at this point, like, people do this, ask questions, and then we would start by doing what's our interests, what's the issue, what's our interests, and then we would start brainstorming. Just that he's giving you information, so this is a time to ask questions before people come up with brainstorms that we would put up on the board. So this is a good time. Rebecca, will you share this into the
What about, Brian, are there
agenda
any,
so people
are we getting any more ESSER dollars or anything that could combat some of those costs?
We have ESSER $3 for the next 2 years. And those have to be spent on all those uses for ESSER. It has to be COVID related.
Right.
I mean, we're definitely going to be using those for
20% have to go to learning loss?
or even, so their learning loss is a separate grant actually, so we'll be, some of the curriculum purchases that we're doing right now, we're going to use with ESSER, which, is a $1 million purchase, right, $1.2 million we're going to use with ESSER. We're going to put some capital projects for heating units and some stuff like that for the state to approve for ESSER dollars.
The ones that the board's already voted on?
We have some staff that are on ESSER 2, that as I build budget, I'll probably roll over to ESSER 3 right now, because, there is a time limit for us to claim these dollars.
Yeah.
And at some point, if we don't continue to draw down, I'd be afraid that we'd get to the end and if we were waiting for like a big capital project or something like that if there's any type of delay and you didn't get it in time, you would.
Well, building staffing ends at one-time dollars is a very poor practice because you get obligated, and people get used to the position and all that kind of stuff, and suddenly there's no money there.
Well, right. Well, and Trustee Jones, what's been happening is that we've been using the ESSER dollars, and that is one reason. The other reason why fund balance is going to go up. So it's not just the enrollment funding; it's that eligible cost that we would have possibly used the general fund for on custodial supplies, other things that were dead related to COVID, some technology costs and those things that we're now using ESSER. So effectively, it's helped the fund balance go up.
Some trade-offs there.
Right, and so eventually, yes, in 2 years when ESSER goes away, we will have to, and know that some of those costs are coming back to the general fund. But if the general fund, the fund balance kept going up, and so you had that capacity, then you just wouldn't have as big as a surplus.
But eventually, there's going to be a time of reckoning.
There is going to be a funding cliff, and everybody talks about it, right?
And you don't want to get into that position because that becomes extraordinarily painful.
untenable.
Yeah.
What is our reserve fund? What was the last, like when we had to report it to the state, where were we at percentage wise?
We were right around 16% at the end of last year on our financial statements, on our audit.
And are we projected to stay there, go up?
We're gonna go up these years, as I've discussed,
Right.
because of that enrollment. I mean, state revenues are up. I mean,
So then, Dr. Meyer, has your team been able to meet or whatever to, I mean, I guess where do we come from here? Do you guys, I mean, every year we get to this point, but have you guys been able to meet to come up with what are you comfortable with in one of those?
Nope, he just ran through this with me.
Yeah,
and we haven't ran through it with anybody else on the team. But I
actually got the numbers I did this Friday.
Right.
I just want people to ask questions though before we even go to the next step, because there's a lot of new people on the team, and that they understand where he's getting the numbers from and asking questions before we even get to that point.
Yeah.
Can I ask just a question related to the advanced professional dollars? The language in the negotiated agreement is that it's passed through. So I am concerned that we are spending about $25,000 general fund dollars to subsidize that, because it's based on weighted average and not so because of our weighted average. If we're supposed to get 2,000, we might be getting 1,800 for everybody, but everybody's getting 2,000. But the language is that it's supposed to be a pass-through. So, can we at least have a conversation maybe at some point about making that happen?
On the AP and the weighted average though, because it's 96 teachers from our AP and they're in the slot, and that's the amount of money we pass through.
Right, but then you take it based on what your enrollment is, and that enrollment drives how many teachers you're funded, and then it's a weighted average, so you change the divisor, and so that's why the dollars don't quite exactly match, and never will.
Okay.
So if we could at least have
Sometimes
language.
it could, the first time that Brian and I ran through it, and we only had AP 1, so first the dollars were less.
Right.
We were like $2,000 in the red. Brian saw it, and I said, it's pretty close. So it was close, but it wasn't exact. And so now I think as more money's going to AP, and that divisor, because it's a bigger percentage, I think it's just, that's what just happened.
Yeah, it's the same old story, when Governor Little says, all teachers are getting 10%.
Yeah.
No, they're not. It's based on a weighted average. So, I mean, it's, people don't understand that. But so, I mean, the aid money's the same way, right?
Yeah, and then I don't know where the 10% came from, but it definitely wasn't based on the career ladder, because like a P1,
Well,
getting X amount, and a P1 this year, it's only 1% more.
Yeah.
If you look at the two salary schedules from the 2 years.
I don't know, just with all the notes and different things too, I think that it's important that we put the MOU in or have the conversation with the allocated, like you were saying, those bonuses with the intent of that language for next year. Because I know this year it was the $1,000, next year it's about $1,800. So to be spent out, and the direction is to have that spent out by the end of November, I believe, or December. I can't remember what they have a date in there that it has to be sent out by.
Dr. Meyer in agreement with the statute, but there's nowhere in that statute. So I asked the IEA people where they're coming up with the November date, and my person hasn't gotten back to me yet.
It doesn't say that.
My understanding was that they said by December or something, so it was
It's not in the
statute.
statute, that's right.
It just says next year, but it doesn't give it.
Those dollars are federal dollars, and so that'll be when the grant. I thought we could go all the way through September.
All the way through the following September.
That's right.
And then just to clarify, the 1,800 is $1,500 bonus plus $300 and whatever dollars
for the
benefits. Yeah. Just so people are going to
No, I
watch,
just
so
want to
I
make
don't
sure
want
we
to
have
that amount out there.
Yeah, and that part I don't think we need to even talk about, because that's not negotiated, it's in law, and we need to do it. So if we could just stay focused on, do people have other questions? Are you wanting to caucus? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, yeah, probably, I guess.
Before we brainstorm?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
And I think what I would want maybe from your group is, you guys have, 2 board members sitting here that, they can't speak for the board, but they know the board better than we do. You have your team. what are you guys comfortable with? We can go talk about what, you know, if we have any questions or
Yeah.
wanna add anything, and then maybe we can come back and, you know, decide.
Start our brainstorm.
Yeah, we have to do our income, our interest, and then do our brainstorming.
One of the things going back to hate that I'd like to point out, and we worked really hard to get that, we finally got that. I'd hate to see us, yeah, I mean, I understand the pass-through for sure. You know, we gotta make, or the, you know, no cost to the district, I understand we need to
Yeah.
adjust, but to start taking more of that, I think that's.
Going backwards.
Yeah, I think that would be very difficult for people to ratify, but
Mhm.
it's just my opinion. But, so yeah, I think if we be comfortable doing
Yeah,
that, just talking
absolutely.
and talking about what you guys.
Sure.
what-
Do you guys wanna go to Lisa's office?
Sure.
Did you link that, Brian's, do we have Brian's presentation? Could you?
She
I put it in
Resources?
the draft
Oh.
with our,
Did you put it in the resource section?
I can link it in there as well.
Where did you put it in the agenda?
I put it in our spreadsheet,
What spreadsheet?
our budget spreadsheet. I thought that's where you wanted it.
Oh, can you?
I can link it into
Yeah.
our, yes, agenda.
Just
For
put it here.
caucusing, do we stop the recording?
Yeah.
Since
Yep.
caucuses are.
Thank you for
I have
remembering
to-
that.
No, I already, believe me, I already thought of it.
Thank you.
Can you link it in there?
Yeah, let's go in there.
Jason, you take this.
Yeah. That's exactly
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna stop the recording since we're gonna caucus. So I'm just gonna